All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Life and Sound podcast. I'm Kid Capone, and today I have special guest JBento. He's a New York-based producer and sample maker. Recently, he partnered with the Rucker collective and will be dropping packs on the Drum Broker very soon. This year, he had major placements with Suicide Boys with their critically acclaimed album, Long-Term Effects of Suffering. And he recently scored a Latin Billboard #1 with Anuel AA. JBento, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here?
Yeah.
Good stuff, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'll just jump right into it. How did the recent placement kind of come about in the big Latin Billboard #1?
Yeah, so my guy Kabe, he's a sample maker and producer that I've been working with since about March. So he had sent me a DM asking to work on some samples together, and we've been working ever since. Like, he's probably one of the hardest working sample makers I know that has like such a high level of quality, and I just enjoy collaborating with him. So that sample we made together, I'd sent him over a MIDI chord progression, and he ended up adding a whole bunch of stuff to it, like a whole lot of vocal layers, FX, and just like really building it out to be a beautiful sample. And he has his email list and I have mine. He was sending it out, I was sending it out, and he had sent it to Hide, which he's worked on stuff with Bad Bunny and a lot of Latin artists as well. So he had sent it to Hide. Hide put the song together, pretty much just like layered it out, did everything, did the drums and all that. And it ended up getting to Anuel's team. And he had told me, I was just like, oh shoot, like what's going on?
It's big, man.
And yeah, and then the song ended up being on the album after a whole bunch of, things that happened. But grateful that it actually came out, and it's huge. It's going crazy right now.
So how long from when you and Kabe started kind of collaborating and sending stuff back and forth till when the placement sort of happened?
I want to say about 7 months.
Nice. So you guys built like a good rapport and kind of, it sounds like you and him have a really good vibe together.
Yeah, that's really like my bro. Like, I would say that literally like just every week, like he would send out his sample starters and I'd always send something back. And it's like, these samples were like, the sample starters were like almost done, like, cause he would just put so many layers and stuff. But I would always like, take things out or put things in and just like always like collaborate with him. So yeah, like we have a really good relationship.
I love that, man. Like it's the best when you can get placements and opportunities with people you genuinely like enjoy working with versus just everything feeling so transactional. It actually feels genuine.
Nah, yeah, that's probably like the best thing, just really find like a few people. Like, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just find like 3 to 5 producers and just work with them. And like he's somebody that like, if he don't like something or I don't like something, he'll always like keep me accountable in that sense. So yeah, it's a great relationship that we have.
It's good when you can trust somebody else's ear. Do you have like other sample makers or people you work with that you bounce ideas off of?
Nah, yeah, for sure. So like a few guys over at Major Loops, which is a producer collective and site that I was selling my loops on. Sometimes I'll send samples over to them, and they'll always be honest, and they'll be like, hey, it's kind of mid, like,
hey, but they keep it real, and it improves you at the end of the day.
Facts. So like those are my guys. Like I really respect them and love them for that.
That's amazing, man. Mm-hmm. How did you get linked up with Motif and the Rucker collective?
Yeah, so I had made a sample pack, the Regal sample pack, and with that sample pack, I was just posting sample packs on YouTube and whatnot for about almost a year. And the sample that I had made, like the lead sample for that, was just kind of different because that was my first time trying like soulful type of melodies, things that weren't like, things that were kind of different from what I was doing at the time. So I was using like this really like old, kind of like distorted piano, as well as like a trumpet lead. And it was something that was like very different from what I originally had. And I had followed Motif, and I think maybe like a few minutes later, like he had hit me back. He's just like, "Yo, this is crazy. Like, what's going on?"
I love that, man.
Yeah, like he had hit me up. He said that would I be open to joining the team, and then I had a phone call with him as well as Cass, one of the managers.
The manager.
And, yeah, he's super dope. And they were just like, hey, we just want to kind of talk about, the Rucker Collective, what we do and stuff like that. They gave me a rundown. They were just like really supportive and just said that, we're really here to help, which, isn't the case for a lot of situations in the music industry. And
Yeah.
they have been so amazing in terms of just like mentorship, helping me understand the music business, as well as the opportunities that they're giving, through the collective and whatnot. And yeah, like it's been great. I've learned a lot, especially like the whole process and whatnot, and just making high quality samples and having that level, that caliber, compared to, what I was doing before. So, I'm really excited to, just keep working with the team and, to hopefully release a sample pack soon.
I love you for sharing that story because it's cool to see how you were making a certain sound and then something in you spurred you to try something else than you normally tried. And that's the thing that caught Motif's ear because, I mean, he's a sample maker like us, so he has an ear for what he likes. And it's synchronistic how that works. You tried something completely different than you normally try, and that's the thing that like catches the guy's ear. And he seems like such a solid dude because I always see him post, been getting placements independently since 2018. So he's somebody who his heart's in the right place, his team's in the right place. Plus, like, I'm excited for your next pack. The Rucker Collective has some of my favorite stuff, man.
Nah, facts. And that was the dopest part about it is that, like, literally that entire year, when I started to, just improve the samples and the quality that I was making, I would literally just run through Drum Broker packs and like the Rucker Collective packs and just like listen to Motif samples, listen to, Versus samples, as well as Elkin and Sid, a few other people on the team, and just like, I was just mind blown. I was like, y'all want me? Like,
no, but
so,
that means you're doing all the right stuff, and they could hear. I'm somebody who's kind of like a little spiritual when it comes to music. I feel like, it's one of those rare things where you can capture somebody's soul and spirit, and even after they're gone, it's still here. So something in your spirit caught their ear,
Not facts. I agree with that.
Do you regularly like collaborate or work with anybody else on the Rucker Collective, like Elkin or Jean Bleu or anybody?
Yeah, I'm definitely want to in the beginning, but I'm trying to like really like build out the packs and stuff. But whenever there's opportunities, it's always a collaborative effort. So like doing replays or creating samples, it's always up to everybody. If they want to collaborate, it's always like an open venture in that sense.
Nice. When do you think your first pack is going to come out on the Rucker Collective? Or you can't say?
I can't say.
That's okay. That's cool. That's why I got to ask, though. The people want to know.
Thanks. Nah, I just got to build out, a few more samples.
That's okay, bro.
It's just, the curation process, it's always a process to make sure that everything sounds well and, is solid and cohesive in that sense. So,
of course.
Definitely in the future, though. It's coming soon.
Hey, I'll be ready. I mean, I'm going to buy it when it comes out. I'm hyped.
Word. Appreciate it.
What's your daily routine normally like when you're creating music? Like, what are your hours when you wake up? Kind of when do you end the day? What's that flow like?
Yeah, so like in terms of me making music, most of the time, so I pretty much work from morning to like mid-afternoon. So I usually don't make music in the morning other than, either just maybe like jamming or playing like a little bit of guitar. But usually from like 6 to 10, I usually try to lock in on creating samples and using that time to just create. Some days I'll have lessons. I have a few people that I kind of instruct in, just starting out creating melodies and stuff. But other than that, I usually try to, create at least one sample or get one started. Or I'll actually like take the time to practice piano for a little bit. Just like building out, my understanding of music theory and kind of like really locking in on that. But yeah, that's pretty much, almost every day, unless life happens and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much my daily schedule.
It sounds pretty healthy though, like you make time for your craft and a lot of people, kind of only go off inspiration, but I feel like there's kind of a balance and something to be had about having that work ethic and time set aside in like trying to bring out inspiration versus only acting on when you have it. Because I'm sure there's some days where you show up and you maybe don't feel inspired, but as you get going, something happens and then something clicks and starts.
Yeah, that definitely is the case a lot of the time. Like sometimes it'll just be a long day at work and I'm just like, man, I want to take a nap. And then, it'll be sometimes those days where I kind of just force myself to be like, all right, I got to write something. And then one of the samples actually on Blackout, the recent pack that was released for Black Friday, that really came out of just like me. Like I was tired one day. I was just like, man, I don't want to do this. And then I was just like, you know what, let me sit down for an hour. If nothing comes out of it, nothing comes out of it. And then that's when I started like playing the guitar on that track, and like it kind of just all meshed together. So like, you might as well try it, in those days at one time and just see, if it works. And then just try to, try to make something every day.
Yeah, because, I love how sometimes, again, you're not inspired. You just sit down, pluck away at the keys or the guitar or something, and it'll spark. And then it ends up being something greater than what you thought was going to happen that day. You could have just taken a nap, but instead you made the sample that ended up on the pack.
Yeah.
So, take some advice.
No, facts.
How does your relationship with music kind of changed now versus when you were a kid?
Yeah, so for me, kind of like this is a kind of like strange type of like deviation, but when I was a kid, music was like always a part of my life. Sang in church, played music, kind of like the typical music story, did music in school and stuff like that. But I would say how it's changed from when I was a kid is that, I kind of see it more as a viable career option. And that wasn't really something that was stressed kind of like in my household. It was more seen as like extracurricular. It's like my parents were always just like, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna be either a doctor, lawyer, like engineer. And
Of
even
course.
though I am an engineer, what's it called, just seeing like the amount of effort and work that all these full-time producers put into their craft, and it really made me kind of see that this is a viable career option. It's just that you really have to work for it, and you have to be diligent, and you have to manage your time well and things like that. And just like everybody, on Rucker, especially Kaz and Motif, doing this full time, going hard all the time, that really kind of like motivated me and kind of changed the way that I view music in terms of a career. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty much like my viewpoint now.
What was the conversation kind of had between you two that really kind of inspired you to be like, okay, I really need to be diligent and serious about this. Like, this is a great opportunity. I don't want to squander it. I want to represent them really well and make them proud. Like, what was that conversation kind of like?
Well, I wouldn't say it's more of like a conversation, but it was more just like viewing the fact that, like every month or 2 months, Motif getting a big placement. It just made me look, I'm like, dang, like I want that. Like I want to go hard like that. So like that really just kind of like sparked the way that kind of like I thought in that sense. And, Kaz, always motivating and just being like, you're a part of this too. You can do it. It's just making sure that you put out quality work and working hard and stuff like that. So like, I would say that was pretty much the conversation, but, just that motivating factor of just, the placements, that I have, as well as, seeing people around me and, my team win. Those were big motivating factors in that sense.
Exactly. You see everybody moving and you're like, I'm on a team. I can't be the weak link in the chain. I got to go hard.
Exactly.
I love that. How, like, from the moment you kind of find a sound, whether that's, piano or guitar, like, how long from the moment inspiration strikes till you have like a completed sample, or at least, maybe even a mostly completed idea?
So for me, it really depends. So like if it's something that I feel like I'm kind of like in the flow state and I'm, starting to move, I'd say that maybe like an hour. or 2 hours tops to get it like 70% of the way there. With me and just like the way that I made samples in the past, I usually tried to finish everything. So kind of like I'm starting to unlearn that a little bit because, you know, ear fatigue and just like listening to the same sample in the same key and stuff like that. It can get a bit tiring. So sometimes I might take a break and come back to it and see if I can add anything or take anything away. But
Smart.
most of the time, yeah, I'll usually try to finish it within an hour or 2 hours. But anything longer than that, I feel like I'm starting to second guess decisions or add too many layers and things like that.
Definitely.
So like I really try to keep like fresh ears and not do things for as long a period of time. At least on one sample, you know. Might just move on to the next or something or start something new.
Do you ever have any like things you do to maybe switch up the flow when you're kind of maybe you feel like the sample to your ears getting stale? Maybe you've been working on it for a couple minutes. Like I know for me, one thing that I'll do is maybe I'll get 2 or 3, maybe 4 layers going, and then I'll just bounce that to a new audio track, just all of it, and then I'll use Ableton and I'll just take the warping off and I'll pitch it up or down, and that changes the tempo and the key, and that kind of gives me a new take on it, and then I'll maybe add other layers to this new bounced sample that maybe started from somewhere else.
Nah, yeah, facts. I do something similar. A lot of the times, like with pitching it up, kind of like what I've noticed is that there's a lot of like artifacts and like certain things that kind of add a unique texture to the sample when you pitch it up. So, you know, like if you have a sample that's really dry, you pitch it up 3 semitones or something, and then you add, you know, some reverb, it's gonna sound a lot different than it was before, like, you know, 3 semitones down. So, you know, pitching it up, speeding it up, as you said, those are pretty much things that I do. I also have a plugin that I use by Freak Show Industries. It's called Dumpster Fire. And it pretty much does the exact same thing, but it adds like a little bit, I don't know if it's a flanger or like reverb or something, but if you put that on, it's a really easy way to kind of like lower the tempo and like have these weird sort of effects. And I kind of use that to hear how it would sound pitched down rather than just using the native like pitch tool, you know, to just put it up and down semitones.
That's awesome. Do you ever do like a bounce check? You know, you get your sample going, you're like, I gotta throw some drums on it, make sure it bounces.
Yeah, I have a few loops for that purpose. Like I just have like perk loops that I've just created over the years that I'll throw on that, and then I'm also like I start to use like drum breaks either that I recorded or just like drum breaks that I found on the internet. So yeah, I'll do that to just make sure that everything's good on that.
Where did the creating your own little perk loops like start?
Yeah, so like a lot of like when I was doing beats, especially like uploading on YouTube, I was uploading like maybe like every other day. And I noticed that like a lot of the time I was doing pretty much the same thing with the perk loops. So like I just ended up taking a beat of mine, like removing everything and then just bouncing down an 8-bar perk loop. And then just kind of using that, put like a little bit of reverb and stuff like that. But yeah, I was just using that to kind of make beats quicker. I don't really like grind out YouTube anymore. I probably should. But
hey, it's whatever inspires you. Follow your joy. You know, right now you're in sample making mode, and that's bringing you, you know, your highest joy. So follow that, and then if you decide to go back to the other stuff, you know, it's always there.
Nah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much where that came from. I had just like maybe like 10 or 12 perk loops that I just collected over like, you know, the past 6 years, and then I was just using that and I just drag and drop and just hear how it kind of sounded with the loop, and just like, yeah, that's pretty much like my bounce check in that sense.
That's smart. So did you start producing 6 years ago, and that's kind of like where everything began?
Yeah, so kind of like I guess this goes into like my intro to music production, but
That's okay. It all flows.
yeah, like the way that I started off was it was 8th grade. I was learning how to play drums, and I was also doing sound at a church in my area. And the pastor at the time, he had bought an audio box USB, an audio interface by PreSonus. And he was just like, hey, there's this software on it. It's called a DAW. Like, you might want to check it out. I feel like you'd really like stuff like that because I was super into tech. So I tried it. I would always open it up here and there, Studio One. So that's why, like, if anybody ever wonders why I'm on Studio One, it's because, just like
That's where you
literally been using
started.
it. Yep, since I was like 14. So like, yeah, there here and there through high school, I was like making beats and like making drum patterns and stuff, but nothing really like concrete and just like consistent. And then when I had went to college in 2016, I ended up like really taking music production seriously, consistently practicing, creating beats. And then I'd say about 2018 is when I started putting beats online. And then, after that, probably about 2019, when I had a song with a few members of Internet Money and one of their artists that they were working with. That's when I really started to take the sample making seriously. 2020 started dropping packs consistently, and then 2021 with all the placements and stuff.
Did the pandemic help you get into your zone as far as sample making goes?
Yeah, like from that time, like I would say like sort of like the start of the year, like the start of 2020. I was already making packs, but just being in the pandemic and like being not able to go anywhere and just being at home, I would literally work on music for maybe like 16 hours a day, just like
Good.
making sample because there was really nothing else to do. I don't really watch TV. I don't do anything else. Like so, it
Same.
was like either sleep or like
Eat, sleep, or make
sample.
music.
Yep, exactly. So like that's when I really started to record a lot of guitar. So like a few of the packs that like the pack previews and stuff, you'll hear like a lot of guitar stuff and like experimenting with just live instruments. And that's where I would say that I started to get a little bit more confidence and a little bit better at recording instruments as well and incorporating them into my samples.
Yeah, I love when you post on your story when you're playing guitar or you're working on a sample. Like, it's really, the thing I love about sample making right now, especially, is I feel like it's really bringing back the emphasis on real musicianship. And now it's a new form of being able to make a living off of being a not a session musician, but like a newer incarnation of one. Now we're the whole session artist. You're doing all the guitar, you're doing the bass, you're doing keys, anything else. And it's so amazing to me that we live in this time where you can just focus on your passion. Like you said, you don't really do much. Like, you're just like, I don't worry about TV and all that. I just make my music, and it's like getting you opportunities, and you're living off of your joy. And that's the best part.
Facts, yeah, and especially like just with the whole production and like live musicianship and stuff. Like I know like a few producers who they're the go-to guitar guys, like guys like UV, like a few guys that just like they're known for their guitars and people will always approach them for that, and that's kind of their signature in a sense, and that's what really distinguishes them. So like yeah, it's definitely a good time, especially for people who can play instruments as well as people who can't. But it's definitely a distinguishing factor in that sense.
Do you feel like right now you're kind of cultivating your own signature sound?
Yeah, it's coming together. Like I'm just kind of drawing inspiration from a lot of different places and just really finding out the sounds that I like, as well as just things that people want to hear from me, or things that I want to try out. So yeah.
What are some like instruments or maybe some techniques that have been your go-to that you're like, this is me? I know, like, I like to not necessarily rely on it, but it's in my toolkit. I got that tool whenever I need it. Like, what are some go-tos for you?
Got you. So I'd say for me, like, sort of what's starting to become my signature is just, I'd say the chords that I'm using on the guitar. Like most of the time, you'll hear me like with the minor seven, major seventh. Like just those chords. I'd say that like you listen to that, you be like, oh, that's Jeff. Like, like because as much as I love other different types of chords, but I feel like those chords are the most prevalent in my samples. So you'll hear those a lot. I'd also say like I'm starting to use a little bit more of my synthesizer, and I've created some custom patches that I pretty much use on everything. So like yeah, I'd say those two things. I can't really think of anything else. I'm still building it out, hopefully, but Yeah, I'd
That's
say those
awesome.
two things.
What's some music or some stuff that's been inspiring you lately that maybe has been kind of like shifting your sound?
Yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of like 70s and 80s Japanese funk music and soul music. Like it's so interesting, especially like with the whole concept of like borrowed chords and just like kind of playing out of the key even for like a few bars.
Definitely.
That's really like something that, I was honestly really sticking to the diatonic type of chord. So like, my newer samples, I'm not always like emulating the sound necessarily, but like kind of those techniques, without it sounding like jazz and like a whole bunch of chords and stuff like that. But like, just maybe one or two borrowed chords that make it sound a little bit different. So
Of
yeah.
course. That's what I love about music, and kind of once you get into the theory, there's it can feel like an endless black hole of information sometimes, but when you start breaking the key or knowing why you're breaking the key is when things get fun. Like
Yeah.
I've been studying lately, like Stevie Wonder is just the best at like breaking the key, because really what it comes down to, at least from what I'm learning, is it's all about the melody. The
Hmm.
melody can go wherever it wants, and the chords just got to follow it.
Yep.
And I always heard, it's not the chord you hit, it's like the chord you land on, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like it's just setting up the tension and the resolution. As
Hmm.
long as it resolves, you can lead the ear somewhere that it hasn't been.
Hmm.
Like
Facts. Yeah.
like my go-to on the guitar is, I love, what is it? It's like the minor 7 flat 5. It's like a diminished chord.
Yeah.
And it's a chord that whenever you watch a tutorial on music theory, I feel like they skip over diminished chords. They're like, "Oh, you're never going to
Yeah.
run into it. Don't worry about it." And you're like, "Bro, when you learn how to use this is like a magic chord. It leads you anywhere. You can hit the diatonic 2 diminished in between, and then hit the diatonic 3, and it just sounds amazing."
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
but yeah, so music tangent, but I like that you're trying to incorporate other chords and break the key, and not just do the most generic things that you kind of hear a lot of, with especially with guitar loops. Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of chords that we all know, and
Hmm.
then it's about how can you play something familiar yet unexpected.
Yeah. Nah. Facts. I definitely agree with that.
What has been maybe like something you've been wanting to try recently that you haven't experimented yet in your music? Is there like a genre or maybe a sound you've been dabbling with that you want to try more?
So I'd say probably, in terms of like two different ones, to really try, uh, making more gospel music, as well as bossa nova. So like yeah, like one of the tracks from the sample pack, I was kind of doing like a bossa nova type of rhythm on the rim clicks, and I really like that. But I definitely want to do a little bit more than that, because I have my classical guitar, and just like it's very inspiring type of music. I really like the rhythm and just like the way that everything sounds. So I definitely say those two.
For your gospel samples, like would you bring in other vocalists or maybe things of that nature, or how would you like to kind of put together that sound?
Yeah, so I have a vocalist, my sister, she's an amazing singer. She has a really powerful voice.
You're
So
blessed,
like,
bro.
yeah, like I just definitely just need to utilize her more. So yeah, my sister Jennifer, probably gonna see her a lot more on my samples, and yeah.
That's amazing, because I mean, it's at that point, she helps you on your pack, you get a placement. It's
Yep. She
your
gets a
parents
placement
can't help
too.
but be proud.
Nah,
Like,
yeah, 100%.
and it's cool to me because you can dedicate your time and energy and effort into something you love, and then she probably loves singing, and you get to bring her in, and she doesn't have to learn the ins and outs and everything of the DAW, but she can end up being on a major record and be proud of herself.
Yep, like I'm so excited for that time when it comes. We're just gonna be like, yeah,
It will,
celebrate with the
man.
plaques.
It will. Just keep doing what you're doing, because I can feel it. Like I'm watching, and I've been following you at least for a few months, and it's cool to see how the journey's going, and I'm excited to see where you're headed. And It's just keep going, man.
Appreciate it.
What I guess what are your future plans kind of right now for you and maybe your brand?
So I'd say that probably the biggest thing, I definitely want to be a lot more active on social media. Um, like I know like with sample makers, it's just like you have that one baby picture and then a whole bunch of samples after it.
Yep.
But like yeah, I definitely want to be a lot more active and do a lot more tutorial content. There's definitely an initiative starting with the Rucker Collective where, you know, everybody's sort of breaking down samples and just really being more active on social media. And that's definitely something that, you know, I want to contribute to. Probably do a lot more live streaming as well as sample breakdowns with other producers and other collab samples and stuff. So yeah, just probably next year going into it, more social media, more activity, you know, just more tutorial content as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you seen like the Count Cole and kind of how he does his Instagrams? Like I feel like his sample posts are just so creative. Him and Al Hug, they both do incredible sample posts.
Yeah, like the camera quality for that is amazing. He got the bass shaking. He's playing with like some timpanis or something. Like
It's crazy.
like it's amazing. Him, Kalen Ellis, like all those people, like they're always doing some great content. You know that you know is well received. So I definitely like to do something like that.
Would you do that style content as far as like would you post on TikTok or like those kind of things?
Yeah, I'd like to do like some types of like short form tutorials, as well as like just longer ones, you know, to kind of explain effects and just like the ins and outs and the nitty gritties. But yeah, it would be cool to have one me playing all the instruments, you know, playing the drums, switching over to piano, guitar, all that.
I feel like TikTok is a big kind of untapped gem as far as sample making right now because, you know, first off, it's one of the only platforms where the icon is a music note. You know, it's meant to spread music and new stuff and share sound. And so I like that I saw Audio Anthem on Instagram. He was doing it, but I'm assuming it was on TikTok. But he was setting it up where he'd make a sample and people were duetting it and kind of freestyling and rapping. You know, he just made the sample, put a drum break on it, and people were duetting it and sharing the sound. And I feel like that's like an interesting way of showing your sample making and getting people to like interact with what you're creating.
Yeah, nah, that's I wasn't aware of the audio anthem TikToks, but yeah, that sounds like an amazing idea. I would definitely probably look into doing that.
Yeah. Have you tried filming any tutorials already? Like, you know, just as some practice or anything?
Yeah, I have a tutorial that I did for a Bryson Tiller type of melody. Just like kind of like my take on it using pretty much like stock plugins as well as just like creating it live. Which I feel like, you know, like it's a little bit difficult because, you know, it's like you never know where the sample is gonna go. But, you know, luckily for that one, it honestly turned it out pretty well. So yeah, I've done that. And then I'm probably gonna film a few more tutorials to post on the Rucker Collective channel.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad that people are doing that more because I know I took Mario Luciano's sample class a few years ago. And at that time, there really wasn't a lot of tutorials, especially for, you know, the depth of sample making I was trying to learn. I was somebody who, at that time, I don't know if you know who Timmy Holiday is on YouTube. Yeah. I had found Timmy Holiday's channel, and I was just such a fan of his samples at the time. And I was like, I know how to play instruments. Like, I want to learn how to create something of this depth. And it's wild to see like going from that to now creating my own pack and doing tutorials and breakdowns and trying to give people the information I wish was there.
Nah, yeah, facts. Yeah, I'm actually taking Mario's class right now. Shout out Mario. Oh, doing the Lord's work.
he's a good dude, man. Like super solid guy. Like he will definitely help you. He helped me a lot. I has he showed you the Great British Recording Studios book?
Yeah, listen, it's right here, right now.
I mailed him that for Christmas.
Oh man.
Yeah, when we had our class, I remember he told me to buy Temples of Sound. There it is. Yep. I love it. No, he told me to buy Temples of Sound, and when I went to order it, that Great British Recording Studio book was there. And so I had ordered one, and then I mailed it to him, and then I love that he uses it, and it's just such a good book, and so That's like a little secret sauce for people making samples. Maybe you don't know. Go buy that book.
Yep.
It's a good
Yep.
book.
Buy that book.
I love that it, on a side note, it's like in that book, it even shows you like the dimensions of the studio in case you wanted to build one or like put your own, create your own reverb chamber. Like you could. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's so detailed. Like there's just so much. I actually have to go in and just like read and start taking notes a little bit more, but like it is
Go in with the
such a
highlighter.
detailed book. Yep, exactly.
So where did like your name come from? Like where did the JBento name come from?
All right, word. All right, this is a little bit of a funny story. I was actually going by the name Extendo Clip at the time. And if you look at me, I do not carry extendo clips at all. So yeah, like when I was kind of like, starting to build my social media image and like, creating my socials and starting to upload, I felt like that name didn't really stay true to who I was. So one day I was at this Japanese restaurant in Oswego. I think it's Kiyomi. So yeah, they have like a lot of Japanese food, hibachi style, with the grill and the fire
Good
and all
stuff.
that. Yeah, and they have bento boxes. So I was just like, listen, like I really appreciate Japanese culture. Like I think it's amazing. Yeah, I just kind of combined the two, and I was just like JBento, like my
That's
first
genius.
name's Jeff. Yeah, and
I love that, dude. It's like it came from a place of love, and like inspiration.
Facts. So like, yeah, I ended up going with that. When I was selling beats online, I had a little bento box icon that I downloaded off the internet, and I was
like
using that. So yeah, that's pretty much where my name came from.
Where did your love of Japanese culture kind of start?
I'd say that it started like when I was a little bit young, just like watching anime, just like being just really interested in Japan, like the culture, the lifestyle, Tokyo, like all the different cities and stuff, and also
100%.
geography. Like I'm really like I like geography. It's just interesting to like, but yeah, just like the way that it's just such a unique country. That's really why I really like fell in love with kind of like the name as well as Japan.
It's just wild, in Japan they have all the different prefectures, and you can have some place that's totally populated, like Shibuya, but then you also have those like just village like open areas as well.
Yep.
I don't know. Have you ever watched Initial D? Do you know what Initial D is?
Oh no, I have not.
So it's an anime. It takes place in Japan. It's a car drifting anime, and it's like it's like the car show that like gets people into Japanese cars. It's what got me really into them. I'm even wearing my Skyline Racing team, which is like real Japanese stuff. But I love Japanese culture as well, and like they do this famous thing called like toge drifting, which is basically where they drift on mountain roads. Have you ever seen like Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift?
Yeah,
that's like a real thing
wild.
they do. But yeah, it's crazy. The show is a good show, and that's one thing that got me into Japanese culture. And I love their cars and just the food, the vibe. I want to go soon if I can, but it's been kind of crazy with all the COVID stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. I'd like to go. I'd like to, even just stay there for a few months and just really like take everything in. For sure.
I agree. Have you traveled too much like around the world or anything?
No, not really too much. Like I've been to mostly like a different states. I went to Ghana, West Africa, where my parents are from and where I'm from. So yeah, I went there when I was 5. So it was a long time ago. We ended up doing a layover in Amsterdam and visiting a few family members as well. But yeah,
Nice.
Other than that, I haven't, just because, like school and stuff, but I definitely want to now.
Yeah, for me, I just know I was focused for a long period of time, like just with work and, making music and all that. And you almost like don't realize, you're like, shit, it's been like 5 years or so since I've traveled or done anything. So I got to get back out there too.
Yeah, no, facts.
All right. Well, I think we'll move on to the For the Nerds section. So this will be, for anybody who wants to know kind of the finer details of your working on your process and like what you're doing in the DAW.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What are some of your most regularly used plugins?
All right. So I'd say Contact. I have Contact Ultimate. I bought it. I've been using it like ever since I bought it. It's amazing. I'd say I use a lot of Analog Lab and V Collection. That's probably the next one.
Do you use a lot of the loophole presets or anything for the Analog Lab?
Yeah, I use them here and there. It's just really nice because it's just like almost like a curated set of presets that you
It's
can
true.
always go to. They're gonna sound good. So
What do you
yeah.
like in the contact banks?
So I like using Scarby Rickenbacker bass. I used that before I actually got the bass that I have now, my 5 string. So I don't use it as much anymore. But it's always nice to use that to kind of like draft out ideas, and then I'll just replay them on the bass. So
That's what I do as well. It's kind of like when you're in that flow state, you're like, all right, let me just write it quickly, get the idea out, then I can actually hammer it out and play the idea.
yeah, and especially since I'm not the best at bass, it's really easy to kind of like get stuck in like actually being able to play the part. So yeah, it's always good to have something to draft it up. So yeah, I'd say Scarby Rickenbacker bass. I use the what's it called, one of the E pianos in there. I forget what it's called. I think it's like the Mark One or something like that. But
It's like the
yeah,
Rhodes Mark One kind of thing.
yeah, like it's really dope. I like it a lot. I'd say that. I like using Kinetic Toys. Amazing. I love the music box on there. It has like Bit Crusher and like a whole bunch of reverb, and like it just sounds amazing. Like especially when you layer it the right way. So I'd say that. I bought the Teletone, one of their pianos, the postcard piano. I like using that. It has like a really nice warble and like warm type of sound. So
I think I've seen that. Yeah, I've actually, yeah, no, I have seen that. That's a really good plugin.
yeah, it's amazing. And like yeah, it has like the age one, so it can bring you back to like the 1950s, and just like really sounds like it's coming out of a record player.
It's like you don't have to go through and try to EQ and compress and try to recreate or somehow get close to the sound. It's like easy to plug and play and just get drafting of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd also say the other one is what's it called? By the Phono Loop. They have their cassette plugins, so like cassette piano, cassette mallets, cassette vibes, like it's pretty much just like they sampled a whole bunch of instruments and ran them through tape like probably dozens of times to really create that really warbly type of sound. It's really good if you want sort of like an older type of sound without really putting too many effects on it. Out the box, they have like some amazing presets. So I'd definitely say that. And yeah, I'd say that's pretty much everything that I use aside from like the individual plugins and stuff that we can get into.
Yeah, like what are some of like, like the go-to like individual kind of EQs or plugins that you really find yourself using most often?
Yeah, so for like my staple for a long period of time was the plate reverb that's part of the analog FX collection too. I forget, it's like a EMT 140 emulation. It's really amazing, super versatile plugin. It has like a lot of nice presets. So I'll usually just use the EMT preset and just leave it on there. But if I want a little bit something of a longer sustain, I'll probably switch over to using Little Plate, which is another plate reverb by
I use
Sound
Little
Toys.
Plate all the time. I love it.
Yeah, I got it for free back in what's it called? I think like 2016 or like 2018 or something, and I used it ever since, and then I upgraded to the full Sound Toys, and like yeah, I really love that plugin. So yeah, as far as like guitar effects and amplifiers, I use the Amplitude. I just bought Amplitude as well as the Guitar Rig 5. I was using 5 for a very long time just because I had it and I was just used to it. And then when Complete 13 came out, I switched over to 6, and they have a whole bunch of really nice plugins now, or like little modules inside of it, and presets are really amazing. So yeah, in terms of effects, those are like the bulk of things that I use. And then I'm trying to think of anything else.
I don't know if you're a big RC20 advocate or a J37 kind of tape saturation kind of dude.
Yeah, RC20, I definitely use that. I really like the EQ section as well as the flutter and well, not flutter, I guess you would call it where it kind of like has the dropouts that
The
that
magnetic
little
section.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, the magnetic section, those are the ones that I really use. And I really like it for EQing samples because you can kind of create sort of like a bump by just hitting one of the toggles and
Yep,
whatnot.
at the
So
bottom.
yeah, I probably use RC20 a whole lot more than I used to. Just because it's just the effects are there. You don't have to do too much. You can just slap it on and then it sounds great. So I'd say that. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I remember watching Motif do a post on Instagram one time where he was like screen recording his laptop, and it was so cool because he just like pulled up the bass, like put RC20 on it, just recorded a live bass line real quick, like plugged in the guitar, threw RC20 on it. Like it wasn't even a ton of crazy effects or like a ton of other plugins. It was just like he was getting that vintage sound right away just by knowing the plugin and like being a master of his craft. And it's cool to see people do a lot or like make something sound like they did a lot with just a little bit of plugins. Like less
Yeah.
is more.
Nah, yeah, exactly. And especially with that plugin, like it gets so much hate, especially on producer Twitter. They're like, yeah, RC20, you crack the wow all the way up. But it's just like, people are still making amazing stuff with the plugin. So it's just like it's really about the person that's using it and how they really are used to their tools and what they create out of it.
I agree. Is there any like free plugins that you kind of use a lot or any like native plugins you've kind of found yourself using?
Yeah, so literally until I started using more like Waves plugins as well as the IK multimedia plugins because they recently had like the 25th anniversary sale. I was honestly using exclusively PreSonus plugins for a very long time. Just like stock plugins that came with Studio One. So like EQ, Pro EQ, that's all I was using. I didn't really have any need for anything about that, and also I was a little bit babied by the graphic EQ and just like looking at the frequencies. So somebody that I was watching Lifestyle did it at the time when I was making beats. He's just like, yeah, turn that off. You need to turn your ears. And I was just like, dang, like.
I think there's a balance. I think it's smart to. Definitely there is something to be said about training your ears, like 100%. I would never discredit that. But I kind of feel like the balance of being able to look at the EQ and hear it, like you can hear it and then see it and you're like, no, I see that bump right there. I'm going to put on, the dynamic EQ and it's going to pull back that frequency because I could hear it. I know what it is.
Facts. Yeah, like, nah, I agree completely. So like, sometimes I'll turn it on, but for the most part, I've had it off for like years, and like it's honestly forced me to be a little bit better. I just like really like EQing because before I would just stare at the frequencies and just be like, oh, that looks kind of high, just cut it here, and it's like, nah, that's not what you're supposed to do. So
or just cutting the bottom out of everything for no reason.
Yep, exactly. And it's just like sometimes that's like where a lot of the heavy sounds are, and just like a lot of that body is in those lower frequencies.
100%.
So yeah, you cutting all that out. It's like, yo, what's she doing, man? Like,
there's weight and info down there that like you're like, why is there like 100 hertz on this clap? And you're like, I don't need it. But then you hear it in the mix, and then suddenly you're like, the shit's not slapping anymore. What the hell, bro?
Yep, exactly. So like, yeah, I definitely say that I used a whole lot of stock plugins for a long time until I recently transitioned over to using sort of like a lot of the IK multimedia stuff. I'd say that I was using the 1176, the black version of that. I was using that for a very long time just because the stock compressor wasn't my favorite. I didn't like how it sounded, but
and the 1176 I feel like adds that warmth, those tubes. Like you could just put it on there, and even if you're not fully having it do a lot of compression, it just adds that magic to whatever signal you had on it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like I really like using it on my bass. Like I'll use it on my bass and I'll run it a little bit higher. And then it tames the peaks as well as, makes it sound a lot fuller as well. So
100%.
Like
do you ever have you ever used the plugin RBass by Waves?
Yeah, I had it when I was using it at school.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I didn't purchase it. But
That's okay.
yeah,
You can pirate it or whatever you gotta do.
nah, yeah, I
But
feel you.
our bass is really cool because it kind of adds these upper harmonics and stuff to the bass, and it makes it so if you're playing the bass guitar, it's really easy to hear on the phone or things like that. Like it gives you those upper harmonics.
Nah, facts. Yeah, I definitely gotta look into that. It's been a while since I used it, but I've heard it sounds good on that. It sounds good on 808s as well.
Yep.
Kick drums, like people like using it a lot on that.
What would you say are some of your most regularly used instruments and pieces of gear lately? Like I see you have your synth, you mentioned the bass. Like kind of run us through your gear.
Yeah, so what I'm using right now, for my synth, I have a Behringer DeepMind 12. This is like my first synthesizer. I really like it a lot. It's amazing. So I'd say that. I'm pretty much using a 5 string bass. It's a cheaper one. It's called Glary, but it's a 5 string, and it
It
was only a
works, bro.
few. Yep, and hey, people like the sample, so I'm gonna keep using it.
It works. You're doing it right.
Yeah. So other than that, I have a few guitars. I have my Yamaha, I think it's like C90 or something like that. From This one was built in 1970. So
So it's got like an old sound and the wood's kind of aged.
yeah, like it sounds really rich and beautiful. So that's my classical. I have a Takamine that I use. It's a cheaper one, but it works well. I use it on a lot of samples as well. I have some Atom Audios, the A7X, I think. Yeah, I'm using 7-inch monitors. I have a Scarlett 4i4 that I'm probably gonna upgrade to, like an Apollo or something.
I'm
Like it's
rocking
okay.
Scarlet too, bro. No, I rock it. I got it right here.
Nah, facts. Oh, so I'm using that right now. I also have like a few microphones. I have my MXL 770 that I'm using right now. A bit of a cheaper one. And then I'm using a Key Studio 49 as like my main MIDI keyboard.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any
but-
like vintage microphones or anything?
No, I definitely want to get a few more. Yeah, these microphones are good, but they're modern, so they don't
I
have
would
that type of warmth.
I would just look into grabbing the Electro Voice 635A. Al Hug recommended it to me, and it's like $125. It's cheap. It's not even crazy, but man, when you use that microphone, I use it on my amp, and it kind of does this like it like pre-EQs it because it's this vintage mic from the 60s, and it like rolls off kind of around 6K, so it's not all harsh on the top, and it kind of rolls out the bottom like around like 150 or like 200, and so it's just like perfectly mixed right when it hits the DAW.
Man, nah, yeah, that sounds nice. I think I'm gonna need to try that.
I'd grab it, bro, and they're not expensive and definitely worth it.
Nah, yeah, for sure.
What's it been like making patches on the synth? Is that something that like you just started getting into recently?
Yeah, so I've had the synth maybe since I want to say June or July. I feel like I can use it pretty well. It was a bit difficult at first because I was going through a cheaper interface, so I was dealing with a lot of noise issues. And
Rough.
when I upgraded to the Scarlett 4i4, like it pretty much disappeared. So like yeah, sound design isn't something that's new to me, but just like actually programming the hardware is. So yeah, it's been going pretty well. Like I can make leads, I can make pads, bells, like pretty much anything. Like this has a whole bunch of built-in effects as well. So it has reverb, delay, flangers, compressors, pretty much everything you need built into that small little box. So
When do you find yourself kind of having the most fun, like when you're creating?
Like a lot of the times when I'm making a preset, sometimes I'll throw like a loop in there as well as like some drums, like almost like a beat, just like an 8-bar loop, and I'll just go through and just try to design something that kind of like falls in between that. And like sometimes like when I create a lead and it just sounds so smooth, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I
Found
need
the
to just keep
magic.
doing it. Yup, like I found that sweet spot. So like I'd say that's the part where it's like the most fun for me. or when I'm trying something new, like I'm just trying a new type of technique or like, some new type of modulation, and it sounds really weird and cool, and it's like a happy accident in that sense where it's like I didn't really mean to do that, but it ended up like being a dope preset. So
Yeah,
I'd say that
definitely.
that's the most fun part of the synth.
Now, I know it's probably kind of hard to articulate this, but like, how do you know when that feeling hits you? I know it's kind of an intrinsic question, but like, what is that feeling that you recognize when you're like, oh shit, like this is it. I think I'm gonna record this.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I'll be like, ooh, like what's that? And I'll just like play it again. I'll be like, oh, what's that? Like it's more of like that. Like it just feels like a little bit like a bit of uncertainty mixed with like interest, I guess you could say in a way. So like yeah, that's honestly the way that it feels like to me.
That's awesome. Like I'm always curious because people have different ways of articulating that feeling, and it's special because it's hard to put into words. But when it's just kind of like everybody in the room even knows. They're like
Yep. It's be like, yeah, yeah.
a stank face.
Yep.
What are some of the most kind of underrated or slept on plugins in your opinion? Do you think?
So personally, I think in terms of synthesizers, I'd say Vital. Um, I forget who exactly makes it, but it's an amazing synth for being completely free. Like the amount of
Really?
things that you can do in it is amazing, and like it's probably the most interesting synth because a lot of the parameters you can literally just drag and drop. So like let's just say you had an LFO and you had an envelope, you could literally just drag and drop a specific section of the LFO and drag that to like a, let's just say, the attack on it, and it would modulate the attack without having to really like mess with a mod matrix.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I would definitely look into Vital.
I'm
Like
going
I
to
have
today.
some, yeah, like I have some presets and stuff, but yeah, I would say that's probably like my favorite like synthesizer, especially for being completely free as well. So
Any like EQs or maybe like a tape emulation or anything you could think of like that maybe is like slept on?
I'd say Reels, but the thing is with Reels, I feel like the sample producer community kind of knows about it,
We know, yeah.
but everybody else is asleep. They're talking about RC20 still, which
Still,
is nothing's wrong with that, but I feel like Reels is just amazing. Like especially when you turn the wow all the way up, it doesn't sound like goofy. It sounds very like just
musical.
old, yeah, and music exactly. It sounds like very musical in that sense. So you put that on some vibes or you put that on mallets or something like that, it really shines, and it's like it's different. And it does that without sounding like corny or wobbly in that
Yeah,
sense.
like obnoxious almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why I really like Reels, especially just messing with the other section on the side, like the different types of tape machines. So like the Japanese one, I think there's like a German one. I'm not too sure exactly, but yeah, if you just hit those switches and like switch between those three different types of tape machines, like it sounds so amazing. I know Kame One uses it. I know Elkin uses it. Like pretty much like everybody in Rucker, has at least heard of the plugin. So
100%.
yeah, people need to use Reels a lot more.
I agree. I saw it first on Kame1's tutorial and I was like, okay, I haven't seen this Reels plugin. And then I heard it like in action and I was like, I gotta get it. So I got
Yeah.
Reels. I remember I got Springs as well. I think it's Sign Factory that makes that plugin, but all of their plugins are amazing.
Nah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's audio thing. Yeah,
Audio
they're
thing.
the way.
Have you
Yeah.
gotten to try the Wolf compressor or any of that stuff like from those plugins?
Yeah, I did. I had it on my old computer, and then when I moved over to this computer, like I didn't have any of that. But Wolf compressor is really nice, especially like creating like that warm sound as well as mixing that with compression. It's amazing. I probably need to pick that up as well.
There you go. What is some secret sauce you wish you had known earlier on when you started making music, or I guess making samples? Like, what was something you wish somebody kind of told you earlier?
I would say to use appropriate instruments. So a lot of the times, like, I would kind of use instruments that were a little bit like kind of like cheap and fake sounding, and not in like a creative way. It's just like sound fonts that are like years old and like outdated, and I would be putting that in my melodies, and it's just like this does not sound good at all. Like,
Yeah, it's the
and I
character of
try
the
to
sound.
I try to drown it out with a little bit of reverb and whatnot, and just like it just would not work. So yeah, I'd say that probably just like using bad quality sounds. As I was able to, with my job, I was able to invest in, my plugins and just really build out, my collection in that sense. It kind of made things better in that sense. But using bad quality sounds and just like that's not the way to go. Like,
No, I
I'd
agree.
say invest as much as possible in your plugins and the music and the instruments that you use.
I agree because even like I can vouch for even if you're not buying the most expensive instruments, like if you at least have a real guitar or you have some sort of instrument, like that can sound so much better than any like free plugin. Not every free plugin, but most free plugins you can find. Trying to do
Yeah,
the same job.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, with certain things, like, unless you yourself play trumpet or trombone or something like that, it's gonna be a little bit difficult to recreate that sound. But if you use it sparingly and you use it in certain contexts, you can always make things like that sound good. But just being kind of aware of that, which yeah, something I picked up from K1 in his tutorials when he was talking about the trumpets and stuff. But yeah, like just being aware of the limitations of the software and kind of using it in different contexts.
Yeah. And there's even, little tricks I feel like you can do to give the impression that something like sounds bigger than it is, or maybe like you played something crazy. Like I know one thing I saw Al Hug do is he'll record like a flute line, maybe it'll be
Hmm.
like a single melody, and instead of multi-tracking all the flutes,
Hmm.
he'll have the main flute that he played, but then
Yeah.
he'll pull up Contact or Mellotron and he'll layer it with some Mellotron flute layers. And you get this like harmony. You get the real like breath tone and the air of the flute, the real
Mm.
flute, but then you get the harmony and the depth and kind of control of the MIDI and blending
Hmm.
them together. And then if you can bounce that to tape like he does, or if you just process them together, it'll sound like it was all recorded real.
Nah, yeah, that's an amazing tip actually. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, like something like flute, I think that would sound amazing. Something like guitar or like trumpet. I don't know
It's
how
too
well it
hard.
would work, but like I mean, hey, that's a great tip. I'm definitely gonna take that.
Yeah, man. I'm always just like I'm a nerd. I'm an encyclopedia of like information of stuff like that. So I always love sharing it with people and kind of like putting them on to stuff that I learned that I was like, this was a breakthrough for me, dude. I gotta share this.
Nah, facts. That's definitely dope.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, we'll move on to my final five. Basically, this section, you can do one word, one sentence answer. They don't need to be really long, but this is kind of where we'll wind things down.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
All right. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
Dang, it's a good
It's
one.
kind of deep. I know. I know.
um, man, dang, this is a little
I
tough.
know. It's kind of hard. It's an on the spot question, but it could be musically. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole life lesson or anything.
So like, yeah, I don't want to like get too into it, but like I'd say that when people say that, what's it called, that you can't do your passion, and make money, at the same time, um, which is just so, I, I
It's
see where people are,
unrealistic.
I really see where people are coming from. Like people are saying that, you can't do your passion and chase your career at the same time, like things along those lines. I don't like the way that that sounds, because it sounds like you're always gonna have to do things that you're unhappy with, or you're gonna be stuck in that for a long period of time. And it's
Which
like,
isn't true at all.
yeah, like with me, like I kind of said before, I was going to school for computer science. I was making beats, and I was able to kind of get the best of both worlds in that sense. I was able to land all these placements while working as a software engineer, as well as graduating from school. And I feel like to tell people to pick one or the other just really isn't fair. And I feel like a lot of that is just like people projecting their expectations on you. So like if you're in
100%.
that predicament, like I really don't feel like you have to choose one or the other. I think that you can do both, and in my case, it worked out. So
Yeah, you're a perfect example, man. Like, you can't say that following your joy and following your passion and doing, I guess, what society expects of you isn't a real goal, like, or isn't realistic, because you're doing it and you're happy.
yeah.
That's the important part.
No, facts. Like I'm happy, especially with everything that's happened this year. I'm just blessed to be here and have these opportunities and collaborate with these amazing people. So yeah.
That's amazing, man. You sound grateful.
Nah, yeah, I definitely am. I definitely am.
I love that. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Um, best advice. What's advice? Um, I would definitely say that probably just like to even start making samples, or to focus on samples. Cause kind of like, I wouldn't say it's one specific person, but a lot of the producers that, like would comment under my YouTube videos and stuff like that, they'd always say like, man, like you have some really great melodies. I think that you should focus on that. And I was being hard headed for literally like 2 years. I'm just like, nah, I want to make beats. I want to make
Of
beats.
course.
And I just really like had that mindset shift, with the whole placement with the internet money artist, Mo Young, as well as Repco. Shout out both of them. They're amazing people. So yeah, like that was really like the eye opener that was just like, yo, like you gotta focus on making samples. So yeah, like 2018, 2020, that's really like the time that I really started locked in, and that, changed my whole production career in that sense.
So, that's really an example, I feel like, in listening to what the world is trying to tell you.
Yeah, sometimes you can be like really stuck in like, in terms of what you want or what you think that should happen, but you could be pushed in a completely different direction that might help you in that sense. So
And it works out sometimes, even if you feel like at the moment you don't know if it's the right decision, but you just got to like have faith in the process, I feel like.
facts, no, for sure.
What is something you wish more people did in their music, whether that's sample makers or producers?
So this goes for me as well, just because like I don't
Yeah,
do
you're
as
included.
much. But like I definitely say a lot more key changes. I think it's dope when people integrate key changes into their music. Whether it's like, just like modulating up
A whole step or
section.
something, or a fifth.
Yep, like I think that sounds so cool. I hear it a lot in like gospel music. Like I think it's just really amazing. I really wish that people did a lot of more of that. So I'd say that's probably the main one.
I agree. I think key changes are like definitely something that needs to be utilized more. And even, breaking beyond loops. I feel like really lately I've been learning more about, okay, where do you draw the line at a loop and a sample? And I guess, they're similar, but the fact that something kind of has, I guess, more evolving sections, I'm trying to dive more into that end of a sample where it feels like a whole original song or piece of music that could stand on its own.
Yeah, like, especially like getting to talk to Mario. He was just like, yeah, if you really want things to sound like more dynamic, just adding more sections, just adding more chords, just making sure that things are moving all the time, as you said. Because, like a lot of the older music was all played live. So, you might get only one take, you might
Yep.
only hear that riff one time in the entire piece. So like everything's always moving, and it's not always just like a whole bunch of like dissonant keys and like passing chords.
No.
It's like it's simple things that could
There's
really
harmony.
move. Exactly. So yeah.
Where do you see music going in the next 5 years?
Man, that's a good question.
And it's kind of subjective, It's not like an objective, like it's gonna go there. I know it. It's kind of your interpretation of where things are at, where you think things are going.
Yeah. At least for me, I definitely think see things, at least in sample making, moving a lot more towards live instrumentation, even more than they already have. Just like,
Definitely.
sample makers I know personally, like that have never picked up an instrument, they're learning guitar, like they're learning how to play saxophone. And I think it's really amazing just because it's like people are, investing the time in order to learn different instruments and like experiment with different sounds. So in terms of at least sample making and composition, I think that a lot of it is going to move towards live instrumentation, which I think is going to be something amazing, especially in the community.
I know. I'm excited to see it. I like it because it seems like we're at this beautiful point where people value performance and kind of the older styles, but we also kind of have these young, fresh minds to where we know how to use the plugins and manipulate sound to like twist the old sound into something new.
Yeah, like people always like build on top of those like older type of techniques and using all the flashy new plugins and stuff like that. It's definitely amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And my last question for you is what would you say is the best way for a sample maker to improve their samples?
So this is also a little bit of Mario as well as, like everybody from Rucker, but I would definitely say to reproduce samples, especially from like older works. So, if you really like the Motown sound, I would literally, it doesn't even have to be with live instruments. Ideally it would be with live instruments, but literally take a an old song that you like or that you really like the sample, study it and try to recreate all those different elements. And a lot of what you'll hear is that you'll hear the different effects. You'll hear the mixing techniques, the panning, things like that. And really it'll start to help you compose samples in a way that is true to that sound. So yeah, obviously, shout out Mario. I've been taking that in. I found a really dope song. So it was off of Bryson Tiller's anniversary album. I forget exactly what the song is called, but I think it's like maybe the second, third track on the album. And it was relatively simple, but the way that it was mixed and the way that like it sounded, it was just like honestly different. So that was like a sample that I had remade, and I was just like I was really like surprised with how much I learned because, especially with sample making, there isn't really a lot of content, or there wasn't,
Not
prior
not
to,
until even recently, yeah.
prior to like honestly these few months, I didn't really know of many channels that really created that type of sound. But I feel like, experience is the best teacher in that sense. So recreating samples as well as like really, taking the time to study those recording techniques is probably one of the best things that honestly helped me progress. And then also I'd say, just creating more samples. Like I know we talk a lot about, quantity versus quality and stuff like that, but I definitely feel that, the more effort that you put into something, the more times you have to fail, the more times that you have to figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Agreed.
So yeah, like if you only really work in like one sample like every 3 months, it's like, you're
not
not gonna
gonna be
have
on a
as
good
much.
rate.
Yep, you're not gonna have as much like opportunity to grow and really figure out what works and what doesn't. So upping to a point where it's like it's healthy. You're not messing up your life balance. You're not exhausting yourself and like not taking care of yourself and stuff. But definitely upping the amount of effort that you put through trying multiple different times and failing or succeeding multiple times.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I really feel like helped me initially when creating samples. So yeah.
I agree, man. That's like helpful, and I feel like more people need to hear that. And even I feel like that may be even a good YouTube tutorial for you to do in the future if you decide, be like, hey, recreate a sample. I don't know if it'll get hit with like copyright or anything, but
Yeah.
recreating a
Most
sample
definitely.
just to show how it kind of informs your decision making, how you recreating something else made you a better sample maker.
Yeah, like it might definitely get hit with copyright. I'm gonna be serious, but like I don't know, maybe we could do like a Twitch stream or something like that. I'll show like something like that. Nah, that would be a great series. I think I might actually take you up on that.
It got me inspired, so I was like, I'm probably gonna leave here and go do that.
Nah, facts.
Well, I appreciate you taking all your time today, man. Like, this is a great interview. I look forward to hearing the pack when it's released. I'm excited to see where your future takes you. Like, I follow you. I'm sure more people are going to be following you after this. And just thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Of course, like I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come and spread some knowledge and just chatting with me for these past few hours. So yeah,
You
happy to be
definitely
here.
are helping the community, bro. Like, I'm serious. This is all gonna come full circle for everybody, I feel like.
No, we're nah, I'm happy.